Welcome to the final episode of our Behind the Scenes mini-series, where we've been talking to the twisted minds who helped bring Horrors Untold to life. And we're closing things out with none other than layout designer Maggie Ryel. In part 2 of our conversation, we go beyond fonts and formatting into the maddening complexity that nearly broke the book, and her sanity. Fake hands, witch alphabets, 195 hyperlinks. It's all here. If you've ever wondered what it takes to build an immersive horror artifact from scratch, this is your last chance to peek behind the curtain. For now.
Were there any ideas or concepts that you wanted to include visually but couldn't?
There's so much tinkering and playing we could have done with a lot of the different things that we just kind of didn't have time because there was so much complexity and things to actually work through and figure out. But I think something that could have been cool is to find other ways to approach the different textural elements that are in the book. So what I mean by that is like when there's a scanned page, what does that look like and how does that play? I tried to make it look as realistic as possible in terms of if you were to have scanned a page into the book or into your computer and it had sort of some rustic look to it or some scanned, you know, blackness to it, I guess, that maybe it was scanned in askew or whatever, and you saw like that dark corner, that kind of stuff. I would have liked to maybe play with that a little bit more. Maybe there's some other textural elements to that to bring it in to play, so there's a lot more visual differences in some of that stuff. I think it works really well the way it is. But I think we could have pushed the envelope even more if we had more time to really explore that. And then I think the other part would be the same thing with the handwriting stuff. That if there's other elements of how you could play, or if we literally had somebody handwrite some of this stuff and try to model after how they did it and how their brain worked with it versus, just me being all those people. That could have been added a more organic feel to some of the stuff. But I don't think it hinders it in any way how it is now. I think it's great the way that it is with what we've got in there. I just think there's always tweaks and little things. But as I said to you a few different times, like at some point the painting's got to be done and you've got to kind of be okay, like we've tweaked and tinkered and whatever enough that people need to get out and read it and enjoy it. So you can't keep going forever.
I had many a college professor tell me that, like, Mark, your term paper's done, just hand it over. Yeah. There's a couple of spreads on my end that I wish we would have been able to approach differently. Like if we had our illustrator be able to sketch something out or create the art assets for something. And I think what we have, I agree with you. Like, I think what we have is just fine. It works very well for what it is. But in your mind's eye, you want to make the most intricate Da Vinci painting out of every page. And yeah, I don't think anyone has the time or the budget or the sanity for that.
Yeah, correct. It would be a lot of time, a lot of tinkering, a lot of back and forth, and yeah, for sure.
And plus, I don't know if you've had this experience yet when talking to other people or just maybe looking at the book yourself, but I think it's very easy to kind of get lost in your own project and hearing from readers who are able to look at this as a finished book for the very first time. Some of them are very overwhelmed by everything. Some of them think it's cool. Some of them are confused by this, but pick up on that. And it's really kind of crazy to see what does and what doesn't get communicated right away.
Yeah, and when we're in it, right, like you're writing it and I'm designing it, we're trying to think about put yourself in somebody else's shoes or in a different lens to think about how somebody else might approach or see or look at this. Like, we're still only one perspective or our own perspective. So having outside feedback is definitely helpful and interesting to bring other elements to it. It's almost like you kind of put it out in the world, let people look at it, and then maybe there's a companion piece that talks about like, okay, some people thought about this. Like maybe there's fan fiction on this book about fan fiction, and how they approach what it could mean for them for that reason of how this person wrote or what that person said, or maybe I would have done this differently or whatever. which is all kind of the goal of just getting more people to talk about it.
Or to write in the margins themselves and stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yep.
What was the most enjoyable or the most fun part of this whole process for you?
The part that was the most enjoyable was really just kind of like collaborating and working together through some of these things and talking about like how wild some of the ideas are, what this could end up looking like, and then getting through to looking at it at the end and going, wow, like you kind of when you're in it and you're enjoying what you're doing, you're like trying to uncover a problem or solve some weird issue, or how do we make this look a certain way, and you have zero idea what that's going to be, and then you kind of work through it, put it on paper, look at it, and then kind of step back and go, oh, that's what that looks like. That's pretty cool. Like that's something I think that's the enjoyable part is going into it for, like I said before, like having however long we talked, a year before we even started doing it, and then probably a year to really put it all together. Um, that's a lot of time, right? And there's a lot of effort there. So to go through the process and then come out the end of it and look at it and go, wow, that's a lot. That's cool. Um, that's probably the most enjoyable thing for me from an individual moment perspective. The one thing that stands out is we talked for an entire year on the phone, and you have this calm voice about you, but then we get on a video call and I see this extensive beard that I didn't expect. So for me, it was like, okay, this doesn't match the voice that I've been listening. I have no idea what I thought you would have looked like, but did not expect the beard. And we talked about that a number of different times. But yeah, so that would be one specific instance, and then just in general, the whole entire project really is kind of it's sort of a cop out in a sense to answer it that way, but that's true. Like for me, the process is the enjoyable part. So.
I thought you would have said like a particular page or an element on a particular page, but I'm delighted to hear it's the beard. So
I
thank
have
you.
yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with the individual elements, because sometimes they're really challenging, into the sense of like, there's a lot there's a lot of layers, there's, 5 or 6 different layers of the book in general on its own at the end, but then some pages have multiple layers of things that are more than that. So for me, it was really a lot of untangling webs, I guess you could say, from the manuscript that you guys had and the way you put stuff together to like putting it into the page. So like I can't say necessarily that I always enjoyed putting all the content into the pages because it was a lot, but at the same time I loved what they look like when they came out at the end. So yeah, a little bit of a love-hate relationship. So I can't say those are my exactly favorite parts. They did turn out to be my favorite parts of the book, however. But yeah, like for instance, the Christmas book chapter I talked about before, that it was a lot of layers and it's one of my favorite sections. In the beginning of it, I kind of was like, what does this even mean? And we call it the Christmas book because it's an article written or a paper written about Christmas, and it's a book in itself inside the book. But when I was putting that together, that section probably took me, that section and the second journal where they're writing, but the two or people are writing back and forth, probably took me the most time. I know specifically the Christmas book took me around 10 hours of time, and that's like 10 pages. So, which is a lot in my world of stuff because, you're not necessarily working entirely an hour literally dedicated to one page. It's usually over the span of multiple pages or something like that. But the amount of intricacies, and that's just to lay it out. That wasn't any edits to it or any extra like, oh, let's put this here or let's change this there or whatever. So that was a lot of work into just one little section. Same thing with that second journal. There was a lot of content there, and that section took me a lot of time too. But those putting in that time, putting those things together, and then finishing them in my own methodical way, and then looking back and going, wow, that actually looks pretty cool. Um, and back to your earlier comment about, other people looking at it and noticing different things than maybe we did. That being said, I would put stuff together and then I would step back a little bit and I might go back and tweak or tinker with a way I put something on a page somewhere, because when I was putting it on that page, I thought one way, but then I step back and look at it as a whole and it's like, well, maybe this should look a little bit different or move over here or something like that.
And I guess maybe I should explain for everyone that when Xandra and I both were writing our various chapters, we sometimes would kind of insert almost like stage directions. I made the comment to you before that I've written comic books before. This felt like writing a comic book script. Like I was writing a script and you were the illustrator and I was giving you my ideas and how things would look or lay out, but then you were the one who was taking those and trying to like actually find a space for them on the page and make it all work.
Yeah,
That's not
yeah.
normal.
No, it's not. And well, the good part about it too is that was where the collaboration kind of came in a lot too, because you would say, let's put it here, or maybe this points to that or whatever. And then when I put it on the page, it's like, okay, well, now we don't really have the space for that. Or if this were to happen in real time or in the real world, maybe that would happen a different way. And so you were very open to hearing how I thought about it in a different manner. And maybe we'd still go with the original, and that's fine. Or maybe we go with what I suggested, and that's fine too. But that back and forth collaboration was a lot of times valuable to getting to that end result too.
On my end, it was the most fun as well. I have to agree with you. Like just being able to put your heads together and try to create something. Art really is, well, certain forms of art really are a group project, and there's a lot of beauty and magic to that group coming together. Like a movie. It's greater than the sum of its parts.
Totally. You don't see the back end where, an actor spends 5 years, looking at a certain character or trying to understand somebody or something, and then you see the hour, half hour, hour and a half movie or whatever it is, that they put on the screen. Same thing here. You don't see the behind the scenes. You can tell there's a lot there, and that maybe there's a lot that got left on the cutting room floor, but you're left with the end result, and um, that's also up for interpretation, which is kind of cool.
All this is why, by the way, I have said to many people that you are the most important creator on the team for this whole thing.
Yeah, I don't like that term, but you say it all the time. Only because I'm, like I said, it's a collaboration. It's not just, everybody else's input was huge in this. And I made it come to life in terms of visual elements, but it wasn't my idea necessarily. But yeah, you say that it's kind of like just as much my baby, but it is because I did work on it a lot. I did add some elements there, and you allowed for that, which is great too. Not every time do you get somebody who has a book that they want you in part of it or as much part of it as I was here. So that was pretty good.
Well, thanks. I guess. Okay, that's all the fun stuff. Now tell me about the difficult stuff. What was the most soul-crushing part or page or element of the whole thing?
By and large, the complexity of the whole thing was the most difficult part to like before it is what it is to understand what I'm supposed to be doing when you're describing things about these characters. And at first, I've told you before that I usually don't read books that I lay out because I just don't, I'm not a big reader for one. It sounds weird, but I'm not. Like I design books for people and I don't really always read them, but that mean it's not a knock on that. It's just like I just don't have a lot of time to be able to read all these books. Maybe not my cup of tea, whatever. But there were sections where I would have to read things and understand like why something was happening or why this person is writing about this thing so that I could understand how that should have to go into it. So that kind of right there tells you a little bit about the complexity of the book in the sense that I had to understand what I was doing with it versus just laying something out in a book format in its simplest term. So the soul crushing parts of things, I guess, would be um, when there was all those extra layers of things, and we had to figure out how to say, okay, this person, this character wrote some stuff somewhere on a computer, and maybe it got left in the computer or maybe got printed out and scanned in and now we got to like put that on that page, but then there's somebody who wrote notes on that page, so we got to go back and make sure those notes are there and they look like they got scanned in, but then somebody else wrote this stuff on top of it and in the actual book itself that we're creating. So there's like all this books within books, so the soul crushing part would come into play of like, I think I got it, and then I go and read through kind of some of the stuff, and I go, wait a minute, I don't got it. I am let's back up again. Let's talk about this because this is complex. I'm confused. So we had a lot of conversations back and forth like that of like you describing to me what's actually happening, so that I really wrapped my brain around it.
Okay, that's suitably soul crushing. I accept it.
Is that fair? Yeah,
Yes.
I can't think of like a specific moment where I was just like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe. I guess one specific moment would be like going back and resizing the book was a little bit disheartening because that was something that I don't think anybody really thought we would have to do and wanted to do, but we
Yeah.
knew we had to for the book itself, for it to like turn out the way it did.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's
that could fit the question, I guess.
okay, last one. What do you hope that readers take away from the experience?
I guess I would hope that they take away like a sense of appreciation and new perspective on Halloween Horror Nights because that's the whole point of the book, right? Like it's a different way of looking at something that everybody that loves Halloween Horror Nights is into, and it's the history, it's the storylines of what happens that year, that kind of stuff. Like that's kind of the ultimate goal for the book itself. So if that's what people take away, then I think we did our job. To make something that Halloween Horror Nights lovers can kind of appreciate and it can live outside of the actual event as well, throughout the year outside of that time frame. And even if you aren't, you know, an HHN lover, you're somebody like me who doesn't really even like horror, to be honest. If I, that might be a bit of a shock, I guess, but then you can at least take away an appreciation for the story itself and how the things came together and how we've kind of reimagined a reading experience plus added some puzzle elements and stuff. If you can take away some kind of appreciation and new perspective there, then I think that's what I would want people to take.
Now, what did I forget to ask you, or what did you want to add?
How crazy some of there's two parts, I guess. How crazy some of the things are that we did. We talked about fake hands. We talked about I printed out so many fake hands, and tried to like fold them my own self and put them on pages that I looked at it afterwards as a stack of cut out hands and kind of went, this is really weird if someone just came in and didn't know what this had to do with. Like it's real strange.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's some of the things we talked about. I mean, I learned a witch alphabet and talked about a witch alphabet, and talked about things like that to discuss the book. I think those are kinds of some weird little crazy things that we did that you know, if we talked about outside, somebody would be like really confused by, but if in the context of this book, it like makes sense. Um, so that's one thing. And I think the other thing is something you asked me about, which is kind of an idea of how much this book was in the sense of like how many files, how many drafts, how many whatever's content there. And it's I don't know, 3, 4, 5x the amount of a normal book, I guess. There's 320 pages in this book. That's kind of standard for a lot of books, and sometimes it's actually kind of small for certain books. It just depends. But in terms of a book file, in a book that size, you may only have a few files to create the actual physical thing. I have 35 pages or 35 files, um, because of the complexity of each individual section. And then I have another 300 files outside of that are things like links that are in the book or things that are, some of those links would be, by links, I mean the images or the pages or the scanned element, graphics and textures or things that the artist drew, to describe things like Lady Luck and such like that. Um, the elements for the witch's alphabet. There's so many different other files that go into the actual book itself, let alone the amount of drafts we went through, printing out individual pages, stuff like that. So there's hundreds of files there. But we went through around 8 different drafts of this book, not to mention a second edition, because once it was printed, there was some realization of certain things that needed to get adjusted. Um, the other really huge numbers are the links themselves. There was 195 links. Usually you might have, I don't know, 50. That's max. Maybe you might have 4 in a
Huh.
normal book. Typefaces used, we use 28 different typefaces, and that means, a particular typeface, like, I don't know, like just for everybody's understanding, Times New Roman is a typeface, but then there's the bold version, italic version, that kind of thing. So 28 typefaces plus all the different iterations of the different font stylings. 36 different images that were for the different pages within a page kind of stuff. It just the sheer number of the different things is kind of wild when you really take a look at that. And I didn't really put all these numbers together until you asked that question, and I looked at it and went, "Holy crap, this is a lot." Because you don't, with typefaces within a book, you don't want to confuse things, so you may have a maximum of, I don't know, 10, and even that could be a lot. You might have 3 throughout the whole book, or 2, depending on the style of book that you're writing. So to have 28 different kinds of styles of type in there is kind of wild. It's kind of a lot.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Thank you, Maggie, for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for doing this. This is good.